How do you reinvent yourself to be anti-racist? Because becoming anti-racism is a form of reinventing. How's it going, reinventors? I'm Amelia. This is Reinventing You, the channel where you can be inspired to take your own reinventing journey so that you can live a life of joy, fulfillment, and purpose. I normally post twice a week, and if you have not subscribed, I invite you to do that now. This video is a little bit different from my normal video. If you have been paying attention, last week, the week of June the 1st, I did not post anything. I honored Blackout Tuesday and I chose not to post anything. A lot of creators were doing the same thing. I decided at kind of the end of the week that I would do, after a lot of listening and reading and contemplating and praying, that I would do a video that was a little bit different from me in terms of really focusing on a concrete way to reinvent yourself. And I know this will probably be controversial for some of you. However, when I was a pastor in a church, one of the things that I realized that I was being inauthentic because I would keep my mouth shut when people would say ugly things or do something that I did not feel was right or just, but I did not want to lose members, or I didn't want to rock the boat, or whatever, for whatever reason, I didn't say anything, and I lost a little bit of my soul, I guess you could say, in a way. And so I'm at the point in my life where I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not keeping my mouth shut. I'm going to say, in a hopeful and inspiring way, how to make some major changes when it comes to being more open, more kind, and more accepting of people who are different from me. Basically, I'm talking about being anti-racist. That's a huge thing to unpack. That you may not be on the same page and not know what I'm talking about, so that I have got to clarify a few things. The first thing that I learned this last week was that there is something called systemic racism. That is, you may not think, or I may not think of myself as a racist person, but because I am white and I have grown up with the privilege of being the color that I am, I don't know what it's like to be black. I don't know how I am part of the problem and not the solution. As I have said before in my videos, when you are reinventing yourself, you are reinventing yourself. You cannot reinvent all of society. You cannot reinvent your family. You cannot reinvent people around you. You have to reinvent yourself. Now, if you inspire others to reinvent themselves, that is awesome. That's a great thing. But you have to reinvent yourself. I realized that I have fallen into the trap of systemic racism, and I've done it all of my life. Now, I think before last week, I did understand I do have a tendency to see in black and white, literally, and I will make a judgment call based on somebody's skin, which is not right, but I could see that in myself. I realized that. So what I realized was, number one, was that I fall into the trap of being part of a systemic problem, not just a personal problem. And the second thing is, I had to realize that because of my color of my skin, I have advantages, and I really have no idea what it's like to be black. Can't even fathom what it's like to go out of your house and be afraid to drive down a street if you don't live in that neighborhood, or if a cop pulled you over to be afraid, or making sure you have your driver's license, or being profiled, or being taken into a police station just because you have the same color of skin as somebody else who might have committed a crime or is accused of committing a crime. I was aware of the injustice of our justice system in terms of the people on death row, most of whom are black and poor. The people incarcerated, most of whom are black and poor. But I never realized my own benefits I've had of being a white person. It's never really occurred to me. The third thing is, my silence over this matter is not helping any, and that I could use my own way of speaking out, being true to myself is really important for me. It's important for my son to see, and I think it's important for the next generation to see that. I did spend a day last week and I read White Fragility, which is an excellent book. If you have a chance, I would recommend that you read it. And the next book on my list there's a couple of books, but one of the next books that is on my list is a book by Ioma Aluo. And she has also written a book about anti-racism, and she had this quote. She says, "The beauty of anti-racism is that you don't have to pretend to be free of racism to be anti-racist. Anti-racism is the commitment to fight racism wherever you find it, including in yourself, and it's the only way forward." So this video, and I know this is a sort of a long intro. This is a long introduction to say, how do you reinvent yourself to be anti-racist? Because becoming anti-racism is a form of reinventing. And I've said it again and again and again. Reinventing is a process. The Black Lives Matter movement is not a slogan. It is a process. It is a movement. It is going to take time and effort and constantly learning and listening and doing and reflecting on who you are and where you're going and what you're saying and what you're not saying and what you're doing and what you're not doing. And I really like Aluo's saying that anti-racism is the commitment to fight racism wherever you find it, including in yourself. Because, as I've said before, in order to reinvent yourself, you're reinventing yourself. And once you reinvent yourself, you can impact society, because that's where it begins. I want to tell you a little bit of kind of my sort of background and where I come from. I grew up in the South with a lot of advantages that most people don't have. I not only am white, I have very well-educated parents. I myself am very well-educated. I have a master's degree. But also I realize that we have so many advantages because we are white. And I really had never contemplated that before. If I'm going to reinvent myself to be anti-racist, I have to learn when I need to stop holding up the racism that is systemic in our culture. And I'll give you a couple of examples. I have always said that I have a hard time with older Black women because I had a teacher in 6th grade who paddled me in the middle of class, and I was not the one in the wrong. I have always said, oh, well, I've always had a problem with older Black women because of this incident. But when I really thought about it, I realized that I had had an even worse teacher in 1st grade who was white, who I was in you have all these kids in one huge classroom and you bundle them up according to their reading ability. And I started out in the highest level of reading ability. I can't remember what I did. Maybe I did not do well on a test or something. And instead of talking to me or talking to my parents or moving me down to the next level down, she moved me from the top level all the way into the bottom level with the kids who went to special ed. The way she did it was incredibly embarrassing and was not necessary. But I've never had a problem with white women, older white women. Why is that? And I realized that I said, that is the racism that I have been brought up in without realizing that. I have made a judgment based on somebody else's skin, and I have carried that over to include all people in that particular group. What is going on there? And when I realized that, it really clicked how I have fallen into the trap of systemic racism, and I've done it my whole life and not been aware of it. I have been present when people tell racist jokes. Sometimes I have chuckled, other times I have just rolled my eyes. But have I ever said, guys, stop? Have I walked away? Maybe occasionally. I know that I have always felt like from my grandparents to my parents to myself, we've kind of gotten more and more progressive as it comes to racism. But have we? Really, have we really come that far as I think back? I really am ashamed of my own behavior. I do recall, and this is sort of the subtleness of systemic racism and trying to fight and become anti-racist, because I remember one time in my previous church. I'm sitting at a meal. Maybe there might have been one other woman there. And of course, we're all white. And several of the men say, oh my gosh, I remember when it was 20 years ago, 40 years ago. I don't know how many years ago, you know, in the 1960s, the 50s, I don't know. They were just saying how much better the world was and how much better society was. And they went on and on. And of course, I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, if you're a man, but what I should have just said, hey, it was better if you were white and male, but other than that, it's not any better. I kept my mouth shut instead of speaking up. I just sat there and continued eating rather than moving to another table. I saw it in terms of my gender and not as in terms of my race, which I probably should have picked up on. Those kinds of things, very subtle things that I've done, that I know others that are like me have done without thinking. When I look back at the church, and I say that with a capital C as well as my own denomination, we have been more segregated on Sunday mornings than any group ever. I'm talking about from high school to college or, you know, anywhere. It is just awful unless some people make changes in themselves. It's not going to change on the outside. As someone else said recently, you've got to change your heart, not just what you're doing. So I say all of this and have this long rambling video to say that you can reinvent yourself to be anti-racist. And so I have some helps for you. Look at all of your social media accounts, including here on YouTube. Look at who you're following. Look and see who responded to last week's blackout, either on Tuesday or the rest of the week. I am watching everybody I follow on social media. I'm seeing either on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, what are they saying? What are they not saying? Now, I do understand a lot of creators create content and they've already got it posted and it's just been running and they have other things going on. We're still in the middle of a pandemic here, but I'm watching to see what they say. One of the things that I did yesterday evening is start creating a Black Lives Matter playlist. You'll see it up here on this card, also in the descriptions below this video. If you want to check out some of the creators that I follow or have been following recently or had very powerful videos that I really felt like I wanted to share. I'm watching closely and I challenge you, if that's something, even if you decide I'm not going to reinvent myself and become anti-racist, I just challenge you to look and see the folks that you follow, if they've mentioned this issue or not. I'm probably going to stop following some people who have not. Are you a registered voter? Oh my gosh, get out there and register to vote. I'm sorry about that. Camera's shaking because of the cat. And not only register to vote, but also be informed about who's running, the candidates, local as well as national. You know, people focus so much on the presidential election, but a lot of times it's the local people, councilmen, mayors, council people, men and women, mayors, senators, state, Congress, all of those people help make the laws. And speaking of laws, what about your local police? How are they being supervised? You know, what are the protocols are they following? What is their record on dealing with people of color? You know, and I can just tell you where I am in Alabama, it has not historically been good, and I am sure it is bad. So that's one of the things that I am trying to do. And you can also support Black businesses, whether here on YouTube or in your community, especially in your community. If there are Black-owned businesses in your community, they're suffering right now because of COVID-19, and they're definitely suffering from a lot of the violence that's happened. A lot of businesses who either are Black-owned or they support the Black community. Clovis, stop. That's my cat. Are being really harmed. They are the ones that actually had a lot of things happen to their stores and their businesses, and insurance does not cover rioting damage. Excuse me. Okay. My cat is very jealous of the camera. All of these things are what you can do. And to respond to the statement, oh, all lives matter, I have an article below that tells you 9 reasons why Black Lives Matter, and saying Black Lives Matter is so important. That is in the description below. I hope that you check it out. I know this was a different video for Reinventing You. I want us to reinvent ourselves to be the best that we can be, because how can we have joy, fulfillment, and purpose if we don't realize how we are part of systemic problems in our lives, in our culture, and in our community? I encourage you to like this video. I encourage you to leave your comments. And if you have a way to reinvent yourself into being anti-racist, please in the comments below, let me know. And if you have any other further helps, books to read, films to watch, to help in this process, please also leave that in the comments. I appreciate you. Have a great one.